Part 1-1. The Mining Ship. Odyssey Dawn drifted through the cold silence of deep space, far beyond the known trade lanes of the Andromeda expanse. Its hull, scarred by micrometeorites and years of hard use, groaned softly as it adjusted course. Inside the command deck, Captain Leo Grant leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the star map flickering on the main screen. He was a man in his late 40s, with tired eyes and a calm voice that had kept his crew steady through more than one crisis. Right now, though, there was no crisis, just quiet, and the kind of boredom that made even seasoned spacers restless. "Captain," said Nina Brooks from the engineering station. She was young, sharp, and always fiddling with something in her hands. A tool, a data chip, or just a loose bolt she'd picked up somewhere. Long-range sensors just pinged something weird. Not on any chart. Not a rock, not a wreck we know. It's structured. Leo sat up straighter. "Show me." The screen shifted. A dark shape appeared against the starfield. Smooth, angular, and utterly unfamiliar. It gave off no heat, no signal, no sign of life. But it was definitely built, not natural. Could be ancient, offered Owen Hayes, the ship's xenolinguist. He was thin, quiet, and always wore a small pendant shaped like a spiral galaxy. The design doesn't match any known species in the Concord database. Not even close. Derek Cole, head of security, stepped forward. Broad-shouldered and blunt-spoken, he crossed his arms. "Then it's either a trap or a treasure. Either way, we should check it out. We're low on credits, and salvage rights could keep us flying for another year." Leo hesitated. Rules were clear. Unknown artifacts in uncharted zones were to be logged and reported, not touched. But rules were written for safe sectors, not for ships like the Odyssey Dawn, which barely scraped by on the edge of everything. "Fine," Leo said at last. "But we go in careful. Full suits, no direct contact until Owen clears it. And Derek, you don't touch anything unless I say so." Derek grinned. "Wouldn't dream of it, Captain." An hour later, the four of them, Leo, Nina, Owen, and Derek, floated through the airlock of their shuttle and onto the derelict surface. The structure was black as void, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. There were no doors, no markings, just smooth panels that seemed to shift slightly when stared at too long. "This place gives me the creeps," Nina muttered, her voice crackling over the comms. Owen ran a scanner along the wall. "The material? It's not metal, not ceramic. It reads like organic alloy. Almost alive," Derek snorted. "Everything's alive until it isn't. Let's find an entrance." As if in answer, a section of the wall shimmered and slid open with a soft hiss. Cold air, older than stars, rushed out. Leo raised a hand. "Hold, Owen, scan for atmosphere, toxins, anything." Owen checked his readings. Breathable, but stale. Like it's been sealed for centuries. They stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit by faint blue veins running through the walls. The floor felt solid but gave slightly underfoot, like walking on dense foam. Strange symbols covered every surface. Curved, interlocking lines that seemed to move when not looked at directly. "This isn't just writing," Owen whispered, awe in his voice. "It's a language of memory. Each symbol holds layers of meaning. I've never seen anything like it." Nina knelt, brushing dust from a circular panel in the center of the chamber. "There's a device here. Looks like a control node. Maybe a power source." Derek moved closer. "Can you turn it on?" "Don't!" Owen said sharply. "We don't know what it does. This whole place might be a tomb, a warning, or a weapon. Messing with it could..." But Derek was already reaching. "Relax, Professor. Worst case, it shocks me. Best case, we get paid." Before anyone could stop him, he pressed his palm flat against the panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the symbols on the walls flared bright blue. The floor vibrated. A low hum filled the air, growing louder, deeper, until it felt like the ship itself was breathing. From the center of the room, a sphere of light rose slowly into the air, pulsing, steady, watching. "What did you do?" Leo snapped. Derek stepped back, hands raised. "I just touched it." "It's not my fault." Owen stared at the sphere, his face pale. "It's a beacon. And it's broadcasting." "Broadcasting what?" Nina asked. "A signal. Strong, directed, not random." Owen's voice dropped. "It's calling someone." Outside in the void, a ripple passed through space, not light, not sound, but something deeper, older. It moved faster than physics allowed, slipping between dimensions, heading outward in all directions. One thread of it shot toward the heart of the galactic Concord, another toward the lawless fringe worlds, and one, faint but clear, aimed straight for a quiet blue planet far, far away. Earth. Back inside the derelict, the light sphere dimmed and vanished. The hum faded. The walls went dark again. Silence returned, but something had changed. Leo looked at his crew. "We need to leave now." They hurried back to the shuttle, hearts pounding. As they sealed the hatch and fired the engines, none of them noticed the tiny crack forming in the derelict's hull, a crack that hadn't been there before. Nor did they see the faint red glow deep within its core, pulsing once like a heartbeat restarting after a long sleep. On the bridge of the Odyssey Dawn, Leo ordered full retreat. "Get us out of this sector. Maximum burn." Nina worked the controls, her fingers flying. "Engines at full. We'll be clear in 10 minutes. Owen sat quietly, staring at his scanner. The signal. It wasn't just a message. It was a key, and we just turned it. Derek finally looked uneasy. "So who'd we wake up?" Owen didn't answer. He didn't need to. The dread in his eyes said enough. Far away, in a council chamber on the Concord capital world, an ancient alarm no one had heard in 500 years began to chime softly. A single word appeared on every monitor in the building, written in a language long forbidden. Human. And in that moment, across the galaxy, old fears stirred. Forgotten legends whispered in the dark. Species that had built empires on peace suddenly remembered the stories their ancestors told. Stories of a race that didn't conquer with fleets or fire, but with something far more dangerous. They remembered the species that walked into extinction and came back smiling. They remembered humanity. And now, thanks to a curious miner and a reckless touch, the galaxy would remember too. The Odyssey Dawn raced toward safety, unaware that there was no safety left. The first spark had been lit, the storm was coming, and it would not stop until it had seen the face of the deadliest species in the galactic. Part 2. The signal reached the galactic Concord faster than light, faster than thought. It slipped through the folds of space like a ghost, bypassing every shield, every firewall, every law of physics the Concord thought unbreakable. In the heart of the capital city on the planet Virelis, deep beneath towers of crystal and light, an archive older than the Concord itself stirred. Dust-covered servers hummed to life. Forgotten monitors flickered. And on a single screen in the High Council chamber, a symbol appeared, a circle with a broken line through it, ancient and feared. High Counselor Mira Voss stood alone in the chamber, her silver robes pooling around her feet. She was Kailari, tall and slender, with eyes that saw patterns in silence. She had spent her life studying history, not to repeat it, but to bury it. And this symbol, this was the one thing her people had sworn never to speak of again. "Human," she whispered, the word tasting like ash. She activated the emergency protocol. Within minutes, the chamber filled with representatives from a dozen species, avian diplomats with feathered collars, armored reptilian envoys, gelatinous beings in containment suits. All fell silent when they saw the symbol. "What is this?" demanded a Zorathian delegate, his voice sharp as broken glass. His name was Krell, and he wore the crimson sash of a warlord, not a diplomat. "Why has the silent archive been breached?" Mira turned to him, calm but firm. "A beacon was activated in the Andromeda expanse. The pattern matches the human warning signal. It hasn't been seen since the Great Withdrawal." Gasps rippled through the room. The Great Withdrawal was a myth to most, a bedtime story to scare younglings. But the elders knew the truth. 500 years ago, the galaxy had begged humanity to leave. Not because they were weak, but because they were too strong, too unpredictable, too willing to burn everything down to save one life. Krell laughed, a dry, cruel sound. "You still fear ghosts, Mira? Humans are gone. Their world is a museum. Their ships are rust. They were asked to leave," Mira said quietly, "not destroyed. There's a difference." But Krell wasn't listening. His mind was already racing. For years he had pushed for expansion, for war, for glory. The Concord's peace was soft, he said, weak. And now here was his chance. If the humans were returning, if they had dared to send a signal, then the galaxy needed a strong hand to crush them before they rose again. By dawn, Krell had left the capital. He returned to his fleet hidden in the Ashen Belt and gave the order. Mobilize. Back on the Odyssey Dawn, things were getting worse. Lights flickered without reason. Food synthesizers spat out strange, bitter paste. Crew members reported hearing whispers in empty corridors. Voices speaking in no known language, yet somehow understood. Leo ordered everyone to stay in pairs. Sleep became rare. Owen spent hours analyzing the derelict's data chip, the only thing they'd brought back. "It's not just a warning," he told Leo in the mess hall, voice low. "It's a test. The signal doesn't say humans are coming. It says you have awakened the Guardians. And it asks one question. Are you worthy of survival?" Nina rubbed her temples. "So we touched a button and now the whole galaxy thinks we're declaring war." "Worse," Owen said. "They think we've released something they locked away." Meanwhile, Krell's fleet, 300 warships black as obsidian, armed with plasma lances and neural disruptors, began moving toward the Sol system. He broadcast a message across every open channel. "The human plague stirs. We will cleanse it before it spreads. Join us or be judged." Some worlds cheered. Others hid. The Conquered Council argued for days, but Mira fought hard to stop a full-scale response. "We don't know if Earth even answered the signal," she insisted. "We must investigate, not attack," but fear moved faster than reason. On Earth, no one noticed at first. The planet had been quiet for centuries. No wars, no empires. Just cities wrapped in green, oceans healing, skies clear. The old war machines were buried under mountains or sunk in deep trenches, sealed by treaty and time. Humanity had chosen peace not because they couldn't fight, but because they finally understood the cost. Yet deep beneath the lunar surface, in a vault no living person had entered in 300 years, a single red light blinked on. Back on the Odyssey Dawn, Derek couldn't sleep. He kept seeing the sphere of light in his dreams, hearing it speak in his mother's voice. He went to the cargo bay, where the derelict's data core sat in a containment box. Against orders, he opened it. The moment he touched the core, images flooded his mind, not pictures, but feelings. Fire, loss, a child's hand reaching through smoke. Then hope, a garden growing in ruins, a song sung in the dark. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Leo found him there an hour later. "What did you do?" Derek looked up, shaken. "I didn't know. They didn't want to leave. They were asked to." "They said yes?" "To save everyone else," Owen arrived, breathless. "Captain, we just picked up a massive energy surge near Sol. It's not natural. And Conquered channels are going dark. Krell's jamming them." Leo's blood ran cold. "He's going to attack Earth." "But Earth has no fleet," Nina said. "No defenses. They signed the Silence Pact. They gave up weapons." Owen shook his head. "Not all of them. My grandfather used to tell stories about the Watchers. Machines hidden in orbit. AI mines in the asteroid belt. He said they weren't turned off, just waiting. Waiting for what?" Leo asked. "For someone to break the peace first." In the Conquered capital, Mira stood before the full council holding a data rod. "I've traced Krell's fleet. He'll reach Mars in 6 days. If he fires one shot at Earth, the old protocols will activate, and none of us know what that means," a reptilian delegate hissed. "Then let him burn them." "Better one world than the whole galaxy," Mira's voice hardened. "You forget. The last time someone attacked Earth, they didn't just lose the war. They lost their history, their language, their name. The humans didn't destroy them. They made them forget they ever existed." Silence filled the chamber. Far away on the bridge of his flagship, Iron Maw, Krell smiled. He watched the star charts counting down the hours. He believed he was the hero of this story, the one who would rid the galaxy of its oldest nightmare. He did not know that nightmares do not die. They sleep. And now, thanks to a careless touch in the dark, they were waking up. The Odyssey Dawn changed course. Leo set their path toward Sol. "If Earth is about to be attacked, and if there's even a chance we caused this, then we go back. We warn them," Nina nodded. "Even if no one believes us." Owen looked out the viewport at the endless stars. "They'll believe us," he said softly, "when the sky starts burning." And somewhere, deep in the void, something ancient turned its eyes toward home. Part 3. On Earth, the morning sun rose over Geneva as it always did, soft, golden, quiet. Birds sang in the trees. Children walked to school. No alarm sounded. No soldiers marched. The world had not known war in over 300 years. The last weapons had been melted down and turned into bridges, statues, and playgrounds. Humanity had chosen a different path, one of healing, not hurting. But deep beneath the city, in a chamber sealed since the Silence Pact, a single light blinked red for the first time in centuries. Paul Finch stood in his garden, watering roses, when the call came. He was 72, thin but strong, with hands that had once held command codes for fleets that could crack planets. Now he grew tomatoes and read poetry. The wristband on his arm, a relic from a time no one spoke of, vibrated once. Then again. Then it glowed. He knew what it meant. Minutes later, a silent car picked him up. No questions asked, no sirens. Just smooth motion through peaceful streets until it reached the World Oversight Complex, a building of glass and greenery built over the ruins of an old war room. Inside, the council waited, 12 men and women from every continent, all dressed in simple gray robes, all looking at him with fear in their eyes. "Paul," said Counselor Lena Ruiz, her voice steady but tight, "the lunar vault has activated. So have the orbital sentinels. The system says, a hostile fleet is approaching Mars." Paul didn't sit. He just nodded. "How many ships?" "Over 300. Led by a Zorathian warlord named Krell. He claims humanity has broken the silence and must be erased." Paul sighed. "We didn't break it. Someone else lit the match. But it doesn't matter now. The protocols are awake." Lena stepped closer. "Are they real? The stories? The machines? Do they still work?" Paul looked at the wall screen showing Earth from space, calm, blue, unaware. They were never turned off, just put to sleep. And they were told, if anyone attacks Earth without warning, without reason, without mercy, respond. "But we have no army," said another counselor. "No ships, no weapons. We don't need them," Paul said quietly. "The Guardians do." At that moment, high above Earth in the silent dark between the Moon and Mars, something stirred. A cluster of old satellites, marked as space junk in every public database, unfolded like sleeping birds. Their surfaces shimmered, shifting from dull gray to polished black. Inside, ancient AIs rebooted, running diagnostics that hadn't been needed in generations. They checked power, checked weapons, checked targets. They found one. Krell's fleet entered the outer edge of the Sol system, engines roaring with pride. His ships were massive, bristling with cannons, shields glowing hot with power. He broadcast his final message to all channels. "People of Earth, you broke the peace. Now face judgment." No answer came. Krell smiled. "Fire on Mars, make it burn. Let them watch their neighbor die first." The lead warship charged its main cannon, aiming at the red planet's largest colony dome. But before the shot could fire, space itself seemed to twist. A ripple passed through the fleet. Lights flickered. Navigation failed. Then from the darkness, small shapes appeared, dozens, then hundreds. They looked like shards of glass, no bigger than a shuttle, moving faster than thought. "What are those?" Krell barked. No one knew. The shards struck, not with explosions, but with silence. Where they hit, a ship's systems froze. Engines died. Shields collapsed. One by one, Zorathian vessels went dark, drifting like dead fish in a black sea. Krell roared in fury. "Target them! Destroy them!" But the weapons wouldn't lock. The targeting computers showed no enemy, just empty space. Yet the shards kept coming. Back on Earth, Paul stood in the old war room, now lit by soft blue light. A young woman named Maya Ruiz, Lena's daughter and the Council's top systems analyst, watched the battle unfold on a screen. She had grown up hearing whispers about the quiet war, the time before peace, but never believed it was real. Now she saw it with her own eyes. "They're using adaptive logic," she said, amazed. "The drones learn from every shot fired at them. They predict moves before they happen." Paul nodded. "They were built to fight smarter, not harder. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way." Maya turned to him. "But why didn't we keep this? Why hide it?" "Because power like this changes people," Paul said. "We saw what it did to others. We didn't want to become monsters just to stay safe, so we locked it away and hoped we'd never need it." On the Odyssey Dawn, Leo and his crew watched the battle from a safe distance. Their ship's sensors showed the impossible. Krell's mighty fleet being dismantled by invisible hands. "They're not even fighting back," Nina whispered. "It's like the galaxy itself is rejecting them." Owen stared at the data stream. "It's not the galaxy. It's Earth. The planet has defenses we never imagined. And they're not trying to kill. Just stop." Derek looked ashamed. "All this, because I touched a button?" Leo put a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't know. But now we do. And we have to make sure the truth gets out. Meanwhile, deep in the lunar vault, a final protocol activated. A message began broadcasting, not in any spoken language, but in pulses of light and math, the universal tongue of reason. It contained Earth's full history, the wars, the plagues, the near extinctions, and then the choice. The moment humanity decided to lay down its arms and build something better. The message ended with a single line: "We do not seek war, but we will not be erased." Krell aboard his crippled flagship received the message. He laughed at first, then grew still. For the first time, doubt entered his mind. What if the humans weren't monsters? What if they were something worse, something that could forgive even after being attacked? His second-in-command urged retreat. "We cannot win this. Their weapons are not of this age." But Krell refused. "We go forward. Even if we die, the galaxy must see that Earth is dangerous." He ordered his last functional ships to charge toward Earth itself. Paul watched from the war room. "He's coming," Maya bit her lip. "What now?" Paul took a deep breath. Now we show him the last line of defense. Far above, hidden in the rings of Saturn, something massive powered on. It had no name, only a designation, Guardian Prime. It was not a ship, not a weapon. It was a mind, a living archive of every human life, every song, every tear, every hope. And it had one rule: protect the cradle. As Krell's ships crossed the orbit of Venus, Guardian Prime spoke, not with sound, but with thought. Every being in the fleet felt it at once. They saw Earth not as a target, but as a home. They saw children laughing, old couples holding hands, farmers planting seeds in spring rain. They felt the weight of 500 years of peace. And then they understood. Krell screamed as his own mind filled with memories that were not his, of loss, of love, of choosing kindness when rage would have been easier. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. His fleet stopped, not because they were broken, but because they were changed. On Earth, Paul closed his eyes. "It's done." Maya looked at him. "Will they remember?" "For a while," he said. "Long enough to choose differently." And in that moment, the deadliest species in the galactic did not fire a single shot. They simply reminded the universe what it meant to be human. Part 4. The Zorathian fleet hung motionless between Venus and Earth, its warships dark and silent. Inside each vessel, soldiers who had trained for conquest now sat stunned, their minds echoing with visions they could not explain. Images of quiet streets, of hands planting seeds, of voices singing in the rain. Krell himself knelt on the bridge of his flagship, trembling, his war mask cracked on the floor beside him. He had come to destroy a monster, but instead he had met something far more terrifying: mercy. Back on Earth, Paul Finch watched the fleet's energy signatures drop to near zero. No weapons charged, no engines fired, just stillness. He turned to Maya Ruiz, who stood beside him, eyes wide with disbelief. "They're not fighting," she said. "No," Paul replied. "They're thinking." In the conquered capital, chaos had taken hold. News of the battle had spread faster than any signal before it. Some species demanded immediate action. Send more fleets, wipe Earth out before it grew stronger. Others fell silent, haunted by old tales their grandparents used to whisper. High Counselor Mira Voss stood before the emergency assembly, her voice calm but firm. "We sent no warning," she said. "We gave Earth no chance to speak. And still they did not kill. They showed us our own fear and gave us a way out of it. That is not the act of a plague. That is the act of a guardian," a reptilian delegate hissed. "Guardians do not hide weapons in the dark. They hid them so they would never have to use them," Mira shot back. "Would you rather they had met fire with fire? Would you be alive to argue if they had?" The chamber fell quiet. Meanwhile, aboard the Odyssey Dawn, Leo Grant made a decision. "We're going in." Nina looked up from her console. "Into the Sol system?" "With Krell's fleet still out there?" "They're not attacking," Leo said. "And Earth needs to know what really happened. That it wasn't them who broke the silence, it was us." Owen nodded. "If the Concord believes Earth started this, the peace is over. We have to deliver the truth." Derek said nothing. He just tightened his grip on the data core they'd taken from the derelict. It felt warm in his hands, like it was alive. The ship entered the Sol system slowly, broadcasting a peaceful hail on all channels. To their surprise, no weapons locked onto them. Instead, a soft voice, calm, human, spoke over the comms. "Odyssey Dawn, this is Earth Central. Identify your purpose, Leo took a breath. We're the ones who activated the beacon. We didn't know what it was. We came to warn you, and to say we're sorry. There was a pause. Then, stand by. Minutes later, a small shuttle detached from a station near the moon and approached them. Inside was Paul Finch alone, wearing simple clothes and a tired smile. He boarded the Odyssey Dawn without fear. In the mess hall, he sat with Leo, Nina, Owen, and Derek. He listened as they told their story, the derelict, the symbols, Derek's mistake, the signal. When they finished, Paul didn't look angry. He looked sad. You didn't break the peace, he said. You just reminded the galaxy that peace is fragile, and that some are always ready to shatter it for power. He turned to Derek. You touched something you didn't understand, but you also brought back proof that the old stories are true, that humanity once walked away from war, not because we lost, but because we chose better. Derek's eyes filled with tears. I thought I'd started a war. Paul shook his head. You started a chance. Now we have to make sure it's not wasted. Back on Varelli's, Mira Voss worked through the night. She gathered every record she could find about Earth. Not the myths, but the real data. Birth rates, art, medical advances, how they healed their oceans, how they shared food with former enemies. She compiled it all into a single file and sent it to every member of the Concord Council, every news network, every school. The truth, she wrote, is not what we fear. It's what we refuse to see. Krell's fleet finally moved, not toward Earth, but away. Slowly, humbly, they turned their ships toward home. When questioned by his officers, Krell only said, "We were wrong," and the universe showed us how. But not everyone accepted this. In the outer systems, warlords and smugglers began spreading rumors. Earth had used mind weapons. They had enslaved Krell's crew. They were planning to invade. Fear once lit is hard to put out. Maya Ruiz, working with Owen over a secure link, discovered something in the derelict's logs. Buried deep in the alien script was a message. Not from the builders of the ship, but from an older race long gone. It read, "When the fire returns, do not fight it. Learn from it. For the species that survives its own darkness is the one that will carry light to the end of time." She showed it to Paul. They knew this would happen. Paul nodded. They left the beacon as a test, not for Earth, for the galaxy, to see if we'd still be afraid, or if we'd finally be ready to understand. Leo and his crew stayed in orbit, helping Earth share their story. They gave interviews. They showed the derelict's data. They spoke of the whispers, the dreams, the feeling that something ancient had been watching all along, and slowly the tide turned. On a dozen worlds, young beings began asking questions their elders had avoided for centuries. What really happened during the Great Withdrawal? Why did humanity leave? Was it exile or sacrifice? Mira Voss called for a full Concord session, one that included Earth as a voice, not a threat. Many resisted, but more agreed. Paul prepared to speak, not as a soldier, but as a teacher. He would not defend Earth with weapons, but with words, with truth. And deep in space, the shards that had stopped Krell's fleet returned to their silent posts, folding back into darkness, waiting, not for war, but for the day the galaxy might need reminding again. For now, the storm had passed, but the sky was still watching. Part 5. The day of the Concord Assembly arrived under a sky streaked with soft pink clouds on Varelli's. Delegates from over 80 species gathered in the Grand Chamber, their usual divisions quiet for once. At the center of the room, a single empty seat had been placed, a seat that had remained vacant for 500 years. Today it would be filled. Paul Finch walked in alone. He wore no uniform, no medals, just a plain gray tunic and boots worn from years of walking garden paths. He moved slowly, but his eyes were clear. Behind him, on a large screen, the Genesis archive began to play, not as a weapon, but as a gift. Images flowed. Earth cities waking at dawn, farmers harvesting rice in flooded fields, children building robots from scrap, elders teaching songs in languages once nearly lost. There were no warships, no soldiers, no threats. Just life, ordinary and beautiful. Mira Voss stood and spoke first. We called this species the deadliest in the galactic, not because they destroyed worlds, but because they refused to become what the galaxy feared. They walked away from power so others could feel safe. And when attacked without cause, they did not answer with fire, but with memory. A murmur moved through the chamber. Some wept, Others bowed their heads in shame. Then Paul spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried. We are not here to ask for forgiveness. We are here to offer understanding. Long ago we learned that the greatest strength is not in how hard you can hit, but in how gently you can hold the future. We left the stars not because we were weak, but because we hoped one day you'd be ready to meet us as equals, not as enemies. He paused, then added, The beacon was not a call to war. It was a mirror, and what you saw in it was your own fear. Krell entered the chamber then, unarmed, his war sash gone. He walked to the center and knelt, not in surrender but in respect. I came to burn a ghost, he said, voice rough. Instead I met a teacher. My people will carry this lesson home. After the session, the Conquered passed a new resolution. Earth was no longer a forbidden zone. It was a partner. The Silence Pact was replaced with the Accord of Shared Light, a promise to listen before judging, to seek truth before striking. Back on Earth, celebrations were quiet. No parades, no fireworks, just neighbors sharing meals, students writing letters to alien pen pals, and old men like Paul sitting in gardens, watching the stars with new hope. Aboard the Odyssey Dawn, Leo Grant prepared to leave Sol Space. His crew stood with him on the bridge looking at the blue planet below. We started this mess, Leo said, but somehow we helped fix it. Nina smiled. Maybe that's how it's supposed to work. One mistake, one chance to make it right. Owen held the derelict's data core one last time. It no longer glowed. It was just a piece of old tech now, its purpose fulfilled. He placed it in the ship's archive with a simple label. Truth. Derek looked out the viewport. Do you think they'll really change? The galaxy, I mean. Paul's voice came over the comms. He had stayed in orbit to speak with them one last time. Change doesn't happen all at once. But today it began, and that's enough. The Odyssey Dawn turned toward the stars, not as miners chasing credits, but as messengers. They carried no weapons, only stories. And stories, they now knew, could be the most powerful thing in the universe. On Varelli's, Mira Voss stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The night sky was full of ships, not warships but transports, research vessels, even tourist shuttles heading toward Sol. For the first time in centuries, the path to Earth was open. A young aide approached her. Will they come in peace? Mira watched a flock of native sky rays glide between the towers. Some will. Some won't, but Earth won't meet them with fear, and that might teach us all how to be better. Far out in the void, near the edge of known space, the derelict ship that started it all began to crumble. Its purpose was done. The beacon had been answered. The test was passed. As its pieces drifted apart, they caught the light of a distant sun, and for a moment, looked like seeds floating on the wind. On Earth, in a small school in Nairobi, a child raised her hand and asked, Are we really the deadliest species? Her teacher smiled. No, we're the kindest, and that's why we survived. In Geneva, Paul sat with Maya in the old war room, now turned into a library. She scrolled through messages from 100 worlds. Thank yous, questions, invitations. Do you think we'll go back out there? She asked. Paul looked at the stars through the window. Only when the galaxy is ready to understand that the deadliest thing about us is our hope. And in that moment, across the vast dark between worlds, something old and quiet settled back into sleep. Not because it was needed no more, but because for now, the light was enough.